This podcast is brought to you by Moloko. If you're an app marketer concentrating most of your budget in Google and Meta, you're not alone. 88% of consumer app ad spend stays inside walled gardens. Meanwhile, there are billions of daily users spending their time elsewhere in gaming apps, dating apps, productivity tools, you name it. That's where Moloko comes in. Moloko's AI-powered platform connects you to those users, reaching 2 billion daily users across 3 million apps. Ready to diversify? Visit molokoads.com and start scaling with confidence. Again, go to molokoads.com to learn more. By now, you've probably heard about Marketecture Live. We put on 2 sold-out events jam-packed with the most insightful advertising content around. Speakers included Eric Seufert, James Paparo from Universal Ads, Mark Grether from PayPal, Olivia Corey from House, and of course, me and the Marketecture crew. Well, this spring, we're coming back bigger and better with a 2-day that's shaping up to be a must-attend event. March 10th and 11th in New York, we're putting on the new tentpole event in collaboration with Adweek and TV Red, and you absolutely need to be there. Early bird tickets are 25% off, and qualified brands and agencies can be comped. Go to marketecturelive.com right now. That's marketecturelive.com to get the early bird discount. Welcome to the Marketecture Podcast. This is Ari Paparo. I am with Eric Franchi, and our guest today is Steven Liss, of the CEO of OpenAds. We have him here to talk about AI, which is, always something we want to talk about, but also what's going on with this company and what's going on with the latest standards from the IAB, which I wrote about in the newsletter, and he has some interesting perspectives on. Eric, you like to joke about how his company name was taken over?
Poor guy.
Poor guy.
The largest, independent company in ad tech just decides to borrow your entire company name to talk about a new product, and doesn't even give you the heads up.
We'll have to ask him about that.
Yeah, let's ask him about that. But I really enjoy talking to Steven and his co-founder, Michael Bishop, whenever I can. They're like just, I think this next generation of founders that are so deep within AI that they're moving so quickly and they're surfacing insights that only builders can surface. I always learn something, so I'm looking forward. Yeah,
another example of how the best way to get onto this podcast is not to have your PR agency email us, but just to shitpost on Twitter. That is the fast path to getting onto the Marketecture Podcast.
My guy.
So next week is Thanksgiving. Do you have plans, Eric?
I do. I'm gonna see family.
Cook?
What about you?
Stay in New York. I'm doing the cooking. I saw this TikTok about how, pecan pie has been around forever, but corn syrup was only invented in the 1920s, and that's the main ingredient in pecan pie. Right? I don't know if you ever made pecan pie, but corn syrup is like the thing that makes it sticky. It's what everyone uses. Not high fructose corn syrup, regular Caro. Anyway, point being, so there's this effort to rediscover the pre-1920s pecan pie that does not have corn syrup in it. And that's what I'm going to try to pull off. We'll see. It's like more of a custard based.
You got to give us an update on that.
Got to give an update on that.
Yeah. So we're totally random. I order pecan pies from a place in Texas called the Burdall Pecan Candy.
Oh, that sounds good.
Company.
But then it's a pecan pie, right? Then if you're having it from Texas, it's not a pecan pie.
Shout out to our Texas listeners. Anyway, what is Marketecture doing for Thanksgiving?
Oh, I'm glad you asked, Eric. We are not recording with a guest because people will be. We record on Thursdays, and instead we'll be watching the Detroit Lions and whatnot. So we're doing a mailbag episode. That means that your questions, the burning questions you have about this podcast, about ad tech, about our opinions, about Staten Island pizza, about anything you want to ask us about, will be addressed next week. So that requires you to do something. What does it require them to do, Eric?
It requires them to hit us up via their favorite method to slide into DMs. So Ari and I are both available on LinkedIn and X. Do we want to put email addresses out there, sir?
I think it's pretty easy to find our email addresses. And you in particular, as a VC, can probably get a lot of inbound. So let's not do that. We will also, hey, look, I'm going to improvise. We'll take video submissions and audio submissions. If you want to ask the question by audio and video, let's do it. Make it short. Don't go
That would be
at
awesome.
length, but make it short, and we'll potentially stitch it in. That would be awesome. I don't know how we'll do that technically, but we'll figure it out. Okay, so you're listening to this probably on Friday or Saturday. Get those questions in right away because we'll be recording probably Monday or Tuesday. Looking forward to it. Hope everyone has a great Thanksgiving. And with that, we're going to dive into our interview with Steven Liss, for the CEO of OpenAds. All right, welcome Steven Liss, the CEO of OpenAds, to the show. Steven, thanks for being here.
Yeah, great to be here.
And you were on Justify Your Existence a while back, right?
That's right. I think that was about 1.5 years ago, where we set out to be the first AI-native advertising network running ads inside AI search and chat.
Yeah.
And what we've learned since then is really the only AI search and chat platform that matters at ad scale is OpenAI. So we built the technology, as promised on Justify Our Existence, to run ads in AI search. It worked great, but we needed more supply. And so we realized, well, we could be AI in ads, or we could use or be ads in AI, or we could use AI for ads. And we are now using the same ad tech we pioneered in AI and bring it to the open web in programmatic display. So
I want to get to that. But first, so how does it feel about the Trade Desk stealing your name?
So the worst part about this entire thing is I had to explain to my mom what transaction IDs are.
That is the worst part.
By far. No, I think
was your mom up in arms about transaction IDs? Was she upset?
He said that this was bullshit. Like any DSP should be able to deduplicate incoming bid requests. Like,
Let's get
my mom said the same thing.
Let's get Miss Liss and Miss Franchi on the show. The mom's episode, Mother's Day next year. We'll have a mom's episode. So reality is, the Trade Desk is using the phrase "open ads," and it's a little confusing.
It's very confusing, and even more so because the product itself, an open auction, is not a bad idea, which means it is quite likely that we, OpenAds, the DSP, could end up bidding into the Trade Desk OpenAds. So I would suggest they trade it in for a better name like Open Auctions, but we'll see where that lands.
And just wait till OpenAI launches their ads product. That's going to really help your marketing too.
Well, I think there's a lot of draw to the concept of openness in advertising. And I think that's what we're going to get into with all these AI frameworks, which is how do you cooperate among different agents, different entities in the environment.
All right, let's talk about the old business model, putting ads into AI results. There are a lot of startups trying to do that. Like, that is not a unique idea you guys had. Are they all going to come to the same conclusion you did?
So they are either going to have to, really the bet we made 2 years ago was that AI was like mobile, where there's going to be an explosion of new consumer apps. When in fact, AI happens inside mobile, so it's actually competitive there. I think there will be an opportunity if AR or VR takes off like that. But the choice for every AI ad platform is either go after this long tail supply. So there is some long tail. There's a lot of student-focused apps. There's companion apps that can run a lot of ads in AI girlfriends. Or you take this technology to other publisher surfaces.
Yeah, the AI girlfriend market is effectively it's equivalent to AI gaming, right? I'm sorry, to in-app gaming. There's no context. There's just attention, and the only ads that'll work will be like the AppLovin style, video watching ads.
I think that's mostly right. No, your AI companion, boyfriends or girlfriends, is actually fairly split evenly.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to disparage.
Show on Disney Plus tonight. No, it's free for the first month, and I just feel like that's kind of cringe. I'd rather sell normal ads in normal places.
Sorry, a side note: what do you call a female incel? Are they also called incels, or is there a separate name for them? Are they fincels?
I think fincel works.
Fincel does work. Eric, you're offended by this line of questioning?
It's strange. It's quite strange. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I was having a conversation. So I'm out here in San Francisco selling some ads, and they were saying, no, it's tough. As women dating here, there's a lot of narcissists. And, the AIs are actually quite emotionally intelligent.
Sure. Let's replace the men with AIs. It makes sense. Moving on to the new business model. So AI inside the ads. This is also somewhat crowded space, I guess. Talk about the best use cases here. I've seen demos where it's just like a banner ad that has a ask us anything about this product thing. Is that the cutting edge or what?
Yeah, so we ran about 30 million of those in production, and we found that, now, I'm still very skeptical that people are going to talk to ads. I think the best use case of display inventory is catching someone's attention and either driving recognition or a discrete action right there. And I'd say the space that's about to become crowded that we're very excited about is, I think that we're entering a golden age for contextual advertising. For a long time, we've had IB content taxonomies in the RTP spec for years, and the buy side doesn't listen, partly because you can't necessarily trust the publishers to be honest with them, and partly because the context wasn't nuanced enough to really drive better performance. And what's changing now with AI is you can derive a lot more meaning from the context on a page. So I think there's going to be a lot of classification vendors. There's Classify, there's Mobian. We've been scraping and analyzing content like this. And I think you're going to have sort of a new wave of third-party verification vendors, possibly bundled in with brand safety, that verify this contextual signal.
Yeah, I mean, Mobian and other AI-driven verification contextual totally makes sense because you have text on the page. Well, how does that affect the creative? Or is it like the creative says, "Oh, you're interested in the sports scores? Why don't you buy a Toyota?" What are we doing here?
Yeah, like that's the sort of broad version of it. It's this idea of generative creative optimization. Let's call it AI DCO, GCO if we get a new TLA, and it's the capacity to adapt a unique creative to every single URL. Now, that's what OpenAds does. That's our specialty. It's this combination of contextual targeting with contextual creative that it's quite difficult to do that in the RTP pipes. And that's why we realized we had to go out and build our own DSP to actually transact on these signals and really combine targeting and ad serving, the media buying with the creative for the first time.
Build your own DSP. Oh my God. Did you use beeswax at least?
We did not. So I think you'll remember
come on, man.
It was March of this year where you said, "Hey, can you vibe code a DSP?"
Yeah.
And the answer is, well, Ari, you can, and maybe we can, and the few people who already know what a DSP needs to do. But it's really the coding models that came out really in the last 4 or 5 months that have allowed a small team like OpenAds to actually build a DSP, an AI-native DSP from scratch. And there's some corners that we've been able to avoid the complexity around identity since we're going after context first. But yeah, these coding models have improved the efficiency of every engineer on our team by multiples.
Yeah, I mean, I think we'll have achieved AGI when you can vibe code like the logic for tracking clicks. That's kind of that's the hardest thing in ad tech. But what's an example of or have you seen when your AI is creating these ads, have you seen any standouts where you're like, oh, wow, that ad is so much better because the AI created it than a human?
Yeah. So it's really, I think ad tech can advance the frontier in AI here around artificial creativity, because the problem with AIs just by themselves is it's like telling your creative team, go lock yourself in a room and give me 1,000 good ads. And they're not going to have any inspiration. They're going to give you the same ad every time. When you expose these models to all of the variety of the web, it acts like human inspiration. They're able to riff and improvise off of all this different content. And we've seen some really surprising and unintuitive ad generations, all brand suitable, all brand safe.
Yeah. Like what? Do you have any examples?
Yeah. So let's take a premium beauty brand that has been having trouble connecting to Gen Z because it's felt almost too aspirational. And we identified context on the web. Here's 20 bougie but cheap things to buy to improve your get ready routine.
Did you just say bougie butt cheeks? What did you just say?
Bougie but cheap.
But chic. Really. CHIC. Chic.
What is going on?
Bougie but chic. Okay, not bougie butt cheeks. Got it. Sorry, my bad. This might require a edit of the podcast. We'll see if this stays in. Okay, tell me about the bougie butt cheeks.
So bougie but cheap and a premium beauty brand, and it generated this ad with a picture of this luxury lipstick on a very realistic, crowded, kind of cluttered bathroom sink, saying, brand name, the only essential. And this was a framing that it absolutely worked. It's relatable, and it solves the brand's problem of making it feel accessible and real to their target audience. And that's the sort of thing where launching that as a static creative and trafficking around the internet, it could work, but it wouldn't hit nearly as hard as it would given that URL specific context.
And then what happened? So I'm presuming it was generated, the brand loved it, you went live. What was the performance of this like kind of fully AI inspired and generated ad relative to, what humans were created?
So that was a pre-flight test where we basically take everything we know about a brand and basically back test on, all right, here's all the bitstream data we're getting. Here are the websites we would have chosen. Here are the ads we would have generated. What we've been doing with...
So you didn't run it?
Not yet.
Okay. Yeah, that's the thing that I'm super curious about.
Let's talk about AI and some of the standards that have come out. I had the idea or the inspiration to bring you on because of some Twitter conversations you and I had. What's your take on AdCP?
So when we started our OpenAds, we had this idea that eventually every brand and agency is going to have an AI that knows their product and knows their goals. And every publisher is going to know their context. And eventually you're going to need all of these entities to be able to talk to each other. So we've actually set out and started building a lot of that internally. And AdCP is really laying out the spec for the rest of the ecosystem. So the more that publishers understand these are the signals that buyers care about, the more that buyers understand these are the signals that are available for us to transact on, that's going to, really the reason this matters is closing the performance gap between open web and the walled gardens. And what AdCP does right now is really scale and automate programmatic direct deals, where it cuts down on a lot of the inefficiency of programmatic. You no longer need 1 million queries per second to actually pick out your maybe correct ID match in the haystack. It's a much more efficient way of scaling what used to be just human judgment.
Right. So AdCP has a bunch in it. Are you currently developing support for it, and which part is the highest priority for your company?
Yeah. So as a startup, we have to be very focused on what actually customers want right now. And where we've seen pull from the market has been from the agencies, from the brands themselves, specifically around creative. There's a lot of demand for efficiency and cost savings in creative generation. And there's a lot of context locked up inside the brands and agencies. So that's the part where I think a lot of missteps with AI startups and ad tech startups have been around building publisher monetization tools that aren't compelling to advertisers out the gate. When really the center of gravity for any innovation, I think it really starts from the buy side. So responding to what the brands want, what the agencies want right now has been, we've put out our early versions of AdCP compliant creative agents for them.
Right. So in that case, how would that work? So the buyer, the brand would be using AI to tell you what sort of elements to put in the creative? Is that kind of the idea?
Yeah. So we might get information from a brand saying, here's our campaign idea. Here's the sort of audience we want. Here is just a natural plain language description of the kinds of creatives that we would want to see. And we can go out and, we're quite good at creative generation. We've been doing that live. And so it's easy for us to turn this around to the buy side and say, yes, here are your creatives. We have your 300 250s, 300 by 600s, et cetera. Oh, you need the creative for a B2B version of your product rather than B2C. Easy for us.
And that's like separate from your DSP and ad network. You're offering like a creative generation service in that case.
Yeah. What we've found is, now this is probably obvious to some, but wasn't to us, is that inside a large agency or holdco, media buying and creative occupy separate silos. And one of the best ways over decades of advertising has been give away the creative and get them on board as media spenders. And that's really our strategy as a DSP.
Got it. Okay. I want to talk about UCP. So UCP is the proposed standard that LiveRamp donated to the IAB recently. And it's pretty hard to get your head around, but effectively is you take a bunch of information you know about the user, their demographics, maybe their interests, etc., and then you create what are called embeddings, which are like long strings of letters and numbers that represent that user's profile, but in a very privacy protected way. There are a lot of these mathematical advantages to doing it. But there's also, and I wrote it up in last week's newsletter, sort of my description of how I understood it as sort of a moderately technical person, like maybe on the waning side of technical as I get older. But what's interesting here is that you and actually some other people who are pretty knowledgeable have just privately said to me, like, there are a lot of really serious technical problems to making this work. Can you talk to me about that a little bit? What your initial criticism would be of UCP?
So first of all, this actually is important. Embeddings are a very powerful technology for understanding context, for matching ads and audiences. It's a technology that the walled gardens use extensively. So the plus side here, adapting standards around embedding interoperability in open web, is a big thing we can do as an industry to close the performance gap between open web and walled gardens. Now, the challenge with embeddings is they're powerful, but the embeddings generated by one model are not at all interpretable by another model. So if you use even OpenAI embeddings version 1, version 2 isn't going to understand it at all. And so, as speaking from a DSP's perspective, if we can get trustworthy embedding signals from a publisher, say about their logged in audience or about their content, that's valuable for us to consume. The challenge here is, well, who gets to decide which embeddings models we're using, and are they open source, or do we end up having to invoke them from a branded provider here?
Right. It's just a string of letters and numbers, and if you have two different code bases generating those letters and numbers, they're just nonsense to each other. You would need either everyone in the entire industry to adopt the same model and then upgrade at the same cycle, or you would need kind of the standard to pass along the version and have a fairly limited number of versions available, which are really pretty enormous practical problems given the speed of model development right now.
Right. So what I can see working pretty effectively is, let's talk about two categories of embeddings. There's semantic contextual meaning of content, and then there's embeddings about the audience. For contextual embeddings, this is something where there's a lot of open source, very good models out there available, and they were built to do this sort of semantic contextual understanding. I think it makes a lot of sense for the industry to pick one of those, and you can use these for 6 months, 12 months. It's a lot better than nothing, and I think that sort of rotating standard would work.
Right. Yeah.
These open source models, or even the ones coming out of labs like Google and OpenAI, well, they weren't trained on our audience signals. They weren't trained on our contextual signals or performance signals. And that's where the power and complexity comes from industry-specific embeddings models. So you could have a data provider, say LiveRamp, who's donated the spec. They could also donate an embeddings model. And if it was open source, open weights, you can share the training data around the industry. Anyone can run it inside their own hardware, inside their own containers, perhaps. That would work a lot better than going down the road of a proprietary embeddings model.
Yeah, a perfect explanation. I appreciate that. And that's what some other folks have said to me, which, in my entrepreneurial brain, I say, well, that sounds like an opportunity. It's actually a better opportunity for entrepreneurs, like to have a locked in embedding model than to have an open source one. But someone would actually have to do the work, and it sounds very complicated. So if you're working on that, let me know, and we'll have you on the pod. All right, Steven, let's call it there. I really appreciate you coming in and giving us the latest on AI. Super interesting. OpenAds, soon to be renamed or something like that. We'll see. We'll keep an eye on the trademark situation.
Yeah, we have not acquired the Trade Desk. There's been some confusion.
That's fine. It's not like the Trade Desk is a very unique brand name either. They probably stepped on some people's toes when they named the company that. So it's all good. It's all fair.
Great to be here.
Thanks for joining us.
This podcast is brought to you by Playwire. Tired of ad monetization platforms that feel like black boxes even when they promise you complete control? Playwire is launching a truly self-service ad platform that gives you actual control. Manage the components of your ad tech stack you want or let their AI handle the heavy lifting where you don't. Your choice. Real-time analytics, transparent reporting, and zero hidden fees. Mention Marketecture and get 50% off your first year. This offer is only available through the end of Q1 2026, so act fast. Visit playwire.com/ramp-self-service to take control of your revenue. That's playwire.com/ramp-self-service.
All right, we're back with the refresh. On this week's docket, we have some M&A, some investments, some regulatory stuff, some presentations, something for everybody. But before we begin, shout out to you, Ari. You joined the board of VidMob alongside longtime exec and leader Molly Spillman and friend of the pod, friend of ours, fellow Staten Island boy, Mark Manito was promoted to CEO. A lot of stuff here. So first of all, tell us about VidMob. Tell us why you joined the board and the whole story of how this came together.
Yeah, the short version is that VidMob was originally known for something totally different. They did like crowdsourced and freelance finding for creating ads. They pivoted a couple years back to be video analytics because they had built this tech that understands video ads at a really deep level. Company's doing really well, and I've always in my career been super interested in creative. That's where I got my start. So seeing the tool and understanding what it could do. And the opportunity in the age of AI, it's sort of like this company was chugging along with its product around video understanding, and then generative AI comes up, and it's the huge opportunity because basically you not only have this intelligence you can give the AIs to generate better ads, but also when the AI creates hundreds of variations of your commercials, it can now understand which ones are compliant, which ones are not, which ones don't show the brand for enough seconds, which models are more, human models are more appealing to the consumer. That's what this tech does. So I was pretty excited to join the board, and especially because Mark and I go back over 15 years of working together.
Yeah, that is awesome. We'll talk about creative a little bit later on. We kind of dive into to the new AI Lumascape, but yeah, it's pretty fascinating to see all of the momentum around creative in the age of AI. And then to your point, and we've had this conversation a bunch of times, these standalone creative generative companies, like they're a dime a dozen. But when you start thinking about what you can do when you connect creative capabilities, creative generation capabilities to other things, whether that's measurement, analytics, just like straight up activation, becomes really, really exciting. So this is, I think, square in that, kind of way of thinking.
Yeah, I think the ability to naively create 15, 30-second commercials, we all saw that with the original video models maybe 18 months ago, right? And everyone said the same thing, which is like, this isn't really ready for real ads, but it's coming. And it's shaking out where it is starting to get ready for real ads. It's not easy. And there are parts of the puzzle that still need to snap into place around brand safety analytics, things like that. And I think this company is well positioned, but there are other innovative companies doing really cool stuff here. There's no doubt that the majority of ads are going to be AI created at some point, a couple years from now, maybe sooner, maybe later. So the infra for making that possible is a pretty interesting space to be.
Absolutely. All right. Well, congrats, man.
Thanks.
All right. Let's talk M&A. Adobe to buy SEMrush for $1.9 billion. Did you see this one coming?
I did not. I didn't even know SEMrush was a public company. I thought they were way smaller than they were. I think we had them on Marketecture once, but I wasn't the interviewer, so I wasn't that familiar with them. Could you give me your take on this? I'm like having a hard time. I'm scratching my head on this one.
Yeah. Yes, I have a take, right? So Adobe has been somewhat quiet in the like marketing and advertising space, just in like ad tech and in our world. But I mean, everybody is a customer of Adobe. Every enterprise is a customer of Adobe, whether it's for creative, whether it's for their like site experience, like they're deeply embedded in there. So the thinking around SEMrush is can you get deeper within the site and like what they call the, kind of like customer experience and start to develop some capabilities in this age of not just SEO, but GEO, right? Generative engine optimization, answer engine optimization. And that's the bet here. The real question is how much of SEMrush today is powering GEO versus are the elements that power SEO going to be the elements that power GEO? And does Adobe, have like a giant leap forward by having this asset?
Yeah, I think these are all good questions. I mean, a big part of this move from SEO to GEO is going to be the customer relations. And so you're naturally going to call your SEO provider to do the GEO. And so SEMrush is, I think, the leader in the space. I think if after 20 years of the web, this is the first substantial exit for an SEO company. SEO is a category, is generally considered to be a bad investment category. So this is the first and only real significant exit.
Yeah. But it's called SEMrush. It's not called SEOrush.
Yeah, right? I know, right?
It's I think, the revenue is not just SEO, but it's also, just like the AdWords.
Do they do a bunch of buying? That's a big part of their business? Yeah.
That's my impression is, yeah.
Yeah. Well, buying on search has also been historically a really bad business. Both, Kenshu renamed to Sky, and now they're almost all retail media, not search. Marin went out of business. There's okay, this is a little bit of a side quest here. Do you know what's going on with Marin Software?
Not at all.
Marin went bankrupt, went out of business.
Yeah, I remember that.
And they've been acquired by a vibe coding studio that is attempting to rebuild the company entirely using vibe coding as an experiment. They're like have these young engineers in training who are part of their program who pay for training, and they're systematically rebuilding Marin like a Frankenstein's monster from dead parts, and trying to make a go of it as a new ad tech company built entirely 100% vibe coded. And I've been following it. The guy who does it, he's very vocal on Twitter. His name is Austin. Hold on one second. Austin Alred. And his
yeah.
He runs a he's run several of these like train young developer boot camp things. I actually, if anyone knows him, I asked him to be on the pod because I'm so fascinated by this, but he hasn't responded. So if anyone knows Austin, give him a shout out that he's being talked about on the pod, and we'd love to hear about this Marin software revival effort.
Yeah, just add him on the socials. Super cool. As a related aside. Business Insider is doing a 5-part series on geo. So like, if you had any questions around, is this a category? Is this a high category? Is this a category that, people are trying to figure out? Like a 5-part series on geo that they just dropped this week.
That's it's sort of a little bit of a proving the point. Like the more text they could write about geo, the more higher they're going to be ranked about their understanding of geo, which is going to produce more traffic for geo. Why is it called? Can we just call it something? I hate the geo so much. I like AEO, although it's a little hard to say. Or yes. AIO. I liked AIO, but that didn't catch on at all.
Yeah, for us, geo becomes difficult because when we think of geo, we think about something completely different.
Completely different.
Forevermore, think about it completely different. But it's the volume of geo startups. It's interesting. Like there was the wave of the monster Series A's a few months ago, and then the volume of raw startups, like just pinging me, saying we're a new geo entrant, is like it's extremely high. So it's interesting. It's a space that the barriers to entry are quite low.
Yeah, it's true.
Just to be able to spin up something and provide some insights. So it's going to be a head scratcher of a category, but without doubt, this needs to exist.
Yeah, I'm invested in this category in a company called Gumshoe. I'm a believer in analytics, not a believer in optimization. A lot of the optimization is advice like, post about your products on Reddit. And I think that's pretty non-sustainable.
Yeah. Shout out to Todd Sawicki from Gumshoe, Marketecture One presenter.
Yes, exactly.
And then the other M&A rumor is WPP is apparently a potential takeover target, allegedly a potential takeover target. And the names that have been floated were Havas, as well as some of the usual suspects in PE. We'll link to it in the newsletter last week. But the thing that stood out was the market cap has gone from 21 billion to 3 billion, which is what? Crazy. And it's gone down significantly, even with Cindy Rose being the new CEO, although she's just brand new in the seat. It'd be hard for her to turn things around in this short a time. I never thought I'd see the day that you'd see something like this, where Havas would allegedly, potentially, even though they said they're not, be looking at acquiring WPP.
Yeah, I don't really have any intelligent opinion about this, except that having however many five majors plus a couple minors, it is ripe for consolidation. There's no real reason these companies shouldn't combine in some way, and obviously the cost savings would be a big part of that.
Yeah, some public markets investor once, in asking me about like kind of the future of the demand side space, once observed that almost every category has like a max of 3. So there's a very important Harvard, I think it was a Harvard Business School study from the 1960s called like the rule of 2 or 3, that almost all industries consolidate to either 2 or 3 depending on some exogenous factors. And that seems to be in play here. Havas also was aggressive. They just did a deal with Horizon a couple of weeks ago. It was announced that I think if I'm remembering this correctly, that Havas is kind of becoming the international arm of Horizon, which is Horizon's a big indie run by Bob Lord. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. All right, we'll pay attention to this one. Couple of investments were announced. So Agentio raised a big Series B, $40 million Series B. Are you familiar with Agentio?
Sort of. I've heard of them and I read this article, but it's not in my radar very much.
Yeah. It reminds me of that company Influential that was acquired by Publicis, which is basically like, a platform to discover and execute buys with creators for brands. It's a big Series B. Sounds like there's a strong AI angle here. And I think the reason why it's interesting, and perhaps because it was perhaps the reason why it was picked up by ad exchangers, they're positioning it as, the TTD of creators, right? Like kind of making sense of a fragmented space, and having a system of record for buying.
Yeah, I think the creator market is fully mainstream at this point. It's kind of gone through its evolution. It was early on, it was sort of this weird thing you would do, sort of a adjunct to PR or product placement. But with the declining ability to reach young consumers through traditional media, it's gone front and center. There are platforms like Influential were largely matching platforms that had a lot of humans involved. You had to negotiate the deals and had to be careful about who you picked and stuff like that. From my limited conversations with folks in the industry, there's a lot of concern on the brand side that it's not very automated, not very safe. They're not sure they're getting their money's worth. So there's a lot of opportunity here. Whether this platform's able to capitalize or not, I think it's a pretty important area for marketers to get better tooling.
Yeah, agreed. It's a lot of the same things that were areas of problems for like early digital ads, and an entire ecosystem called ad tech propped up to solve it. So I wonder if we'll see. Yeah, we'll see if there's kind of people from ad tech moving into creator. Rembrandt kind of started there and then expanded out, but it's an area where I'm trying to pay more attention because there's just so much growth, so much spend.
It's very similar to podcasting, where if you have host-read ads, so podcasting has 2 different modes. There's an ad network model, but there's the more valuable part is the host-read stuff. And the host-read stuff is largely an influential game. Like you want that host, that Joe Rogan read, and you want to give him the script, and you want to approve the script, and the pricing is very arbitrary. That's really a very good analogy. And there are companies in podcasting like Acast that have that do that sort of thing. Not big businesses though; they've struggled with scale.
Yeah, I spoke to Acast last week. Greg Glenday, who's the former CRO from Undertone, is the CEO there. And it's actually total sidebar. We should have them on Marketecture because there's so many interesting things about podcasting in terms of like the concentration of like large shows and, like the ads opportunity. It's very interesting, but it's a small space. We've talked about this for some time, right? It's like a $2 billion space generally. And it sounds like they're the leader.
So we did have them on Marketecture, not on this podcast, but on the Monday. We had them on the Monday.
I meant this one. Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I meant the weekly where we can dive in. Okay. Two other deals. Curved raised a Series B. Curve does creative ad formats and measurement in CTV. They did not disclose the size of the Series B. You familiar with Curve?
Yeah. Pretty familiar. Custom creative, custom targeting in CTV. I think they do a lot of stuff around live and shopping. But I'm sort of beyond that. I'm a little vague. Interactive,
kind of interactive formats. Yeah. And then another new custom algo company is born. Biddable Assets, founded by John Donahue, raised a seed round with investment from TTD or TD7.
I like the name Biddable Assets. It's got some moxie. I like it.
It does. John's a cool guy too, and he knows the space quite well. Love to see it.
Yep. And the Trade Desk had previously invested in Chalice, which is a direct competitor. I think the Trade Desk's investment strategy is like very corporate. They only want to invest in things that are really tight to their objectives.
Yeah. Having spent a bunch of time with them, they're strategic investors. So it makes a bunch of sense. All right, regulatory. Two things here. Meta wins an antitrust suit regarding acquisitions of Instagram and WhatsApp. So they are, unlike Google, not declared a monopolist.
No.
Talk about this one.
Yeah, this is a tortured case. It got started in the Trump administration. It got thrown out of court by the judge. And then I believe under Lina Khan, under Biden, it was resubmitted. And the case largely was about the acquisitions of Instagram and WhatsApp. And there were various emails from like Zuck and other people saying things that courts don't like to hear about dominating the markets and stuff like that. But the fact is, this was really old. The judge was pretty convinced that TikTok was part of the competitive set and that it's a very competitive market. And, the FTC's argument that there was kind of a separate market for communicating with your friends versus, social content was rejected. So this was a win across the board by Meta. It was not unexpected. Most court watchers felt that was going to be the case. And now the real question is, does this reopen the floodgates for acquisitions from big tech? They were largely on hold during the Biden administration. This case kind of gives Meta a little bit of a green flag to move ahead, although probably not like a big one like a Snapchat or something like that. More of a, more tuck-ins, I would guess. So I think this was expected. I think for tech people, this is welcome, that this was not an antitrust suit that a lot of tech people supported because it was really M&A oriented. It wasn't about abuse of the marketplace.
Two questions for you. So do you agree with the judge's finding?
I do. I think that at the time these acquisitions happened, if the FTC had wanted to investigate and block it, that might have made sense because they do have the rights to do that. But to wait 5 years or more after they had been acquired and then have a suit, it seemed like a perversion of their authority and a effectively just a way to strike against big tech without any really rationale behind it.
That makes sense. And then the TikTok argument resonated with me, which is just like, hey, it's like he's not dominating, right? Or Meta's not dominating when you have TikTok, creeping up at their heels every day. And then on the other side, do you believe that this does sort of give the green light, so to speak, for big M&A by big tech?
Well, the red light was definitely on during the Biden administration. Like, it was very clear that nothing was going to get through. And now, under Trump, it's been more permissive, but with the overhang of sort of crony capitalism and the requirement that you make someone in Trump's orbit rich to do a deal. So I'm not sure that this case changes that much. Maybe it does in a future administration as a precedent.
Got it. Makes sense. And then another thing on the regulatory front. So the EU is pulling back on privacy regulations, including the GDPR.
This is a big
years
deal.
of making it super difficult and threatening of fines or actual fines and all sorts of consent pop-ups. What's going to happen?
Yeah, it's not official. It's been mostly leaked documents and conversations, but they're definitely looking at some revisions to both the GDPR and the e-privacy directive. And the e-privacy is why you have the cookie banners, and some pretty reasonable stuff. Like, the reason you have cookie banners is because under e-privacy, just the setting of a cookie, an anonymous cookie, is considered something that requires consent, and that doesn't really make sense to anybody. It's the identification of the user that really is a privacy issue. There's also a bunch of stuff in GDPR about sort of loosening the consent, like enabling you to identify a user anonymously as part of a legitimate interest instead of requiring consent. I think for most business people and Americans, this sounds really great. These changes, the European privacy folks are freaking out. They're not happy at all about it, and there's some uncertainty about how the actual enforcement will work, because in Europe the enforcement is at the country level, and those country regulators may not be copacetic with these changes. I think the best coverage of this so far has been in our newsletter, The Monopoly Report, that came out this past Wednesday. Alan Chappelle did a really good job of breaking it down, so I'd recommend reading that, and that'll be in the notes too.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, cool. Two big presentations dropped. Let's talk about them. So the first was the, I guess, long-awaited, said they would never do it, did it, AI Lumascape.
This is new grounds for the podcast. We've never had audiovisual before. All right, so I could see it. Once again, podcast listeners cannot, but you'll have to trust us on this.
Yeah, so we've got the AI Lumascape here. Let's talk about it. Let's go through it. And again, maybe this will encourage some folks to pull up the YouTube. Here's a few observations for me to start. Number one, credit to Luma to try to make sense of a very fast-moving space with a lot of moving parts. But also, it's kind of fitting things into boxes that arguably kind of already exist, is thought number one. Thought number two is the display Lumascape, basically all the other Lumascapes, are filled with these red boxes around logos, meaning acquired companies. There's so few acquired companies on here. I think it's very interesting. And then number three, up to this whole kind of creative topic, on the upper left, you have the customer experience, basically the AI generation tools. There's so many creative generations. There's so many companies that they have a little line at the bottom because they ran out of room, quote unquote, many more companies, a nod to this space, being so large. What do you see when you look at this? So
there are pretty big, somewhat vague categories. There's content creation tools. There's creative intelligence. There is experience intelligence. I don't know what that means.
Right, which is Adobe.
Yeah, Adobe is there, so is Braze. These are pretty big companies. I think it's pretty challenging to say who's AI and who is using AI in their products. Everyone's using AI. If you're not using AI in your products and you're selling like a SaaS product at this point, what are you doing? It doesn't make any sense. That your competitors are certainly doing it. So this is sort of like a reshuffle of the other Lumascapes more than something that's telling me very much here. I would kind of prefer, or I'd love to see a take of this, which was pure play. I'd love to see the pure play AIs that didn't exist before LLMs came around and what they're doing. Having, index exchange, no offense to Andrew, love Andrew, but like, why is it helpful for me to know the index exchange is in the AI media category?
Yeah, I think that's right. And the teaser that they put together prior to publishing this, which was, basically 3 categories: AI first, AI adapted, and posers, I think actually might be the way to do this, which is just have a clean Lumascape of AI first companies, maybe with the qualification of you need to have, started the business or like fully pivoted into the business beginning in 2023, right? When, you saw the LLM wave kick off. Maybe you raise like, some funding level such that, you're actually a company. I think that might be interesting to, maybe request from another one.
The main use of these Lumascapes is that you print them out, and then your BD guys start circling which ones you've had conversations with and which ones you haven't. And then you go, I never heard of those guys. You pull them up on the webpage. Then you hit the contact us button, which is pretty useful. But like, so they serve their purpose, and I've personally been guilty of doing that in the past.
Yeah, they also help to point to the fact that the market is crowded.
Yeah.
So kind of like if you are in the investment banking business, I think you can kind of use it to show that consolidation is needed. And then for companies, like the one thing that these things have done a good job with, and again, I give Terry and team a lot of credit, is, they help to organize a space and help buyers of technology just like figure out like where you fit in and who the competitors are. So if you agree with the kind of sub box that you're in, you can say like, hey, this is what we do. Here's how you can think about us. Here's where we appear on the AI Lumascape. But I would imagine that companies like Scope 3 and Swivel, both of which we're invested in, both of which are kind of deeply in trying to change everything when it comes to agentic buying and selling, might not like the idea that they're in optimization or ad ops respectively.
Yeah. At some point, the logos get so small, we start hitting the laws of physics. Like you can't have pixels that are even smaller than these. So I think we should probably wrap up on that. I think that's kind of the main thing we wanted to talk about. So thank you, everyone, for listening. Thank you, Steve Liss, for joining us. And also a reminder to send in emails to both Eric and I for our Thanksgiving mailbag episode. No question too dumb, too smart. You can hit us by email, by LinkedIn, by DM. There's a lot of ways to reach us, and we're looking for the juicy questions. So please reach out.
Absolutely. Look forward to it. See you next week, everybody.
See ya.
Thank you for subscribing to Marketecture. New interviews are added every week at marketecture.tv and your favorite podcasting app.
Thank you for listening to the Marketecture podcast. New episodes come out every Friday, and an insightful vendor interview is published each Monday. You can subscribe to our library of hundreds of executive interviews at marketecture.tv. You can also sign up for free for our weekly newsletter with my original strategic insights on the week's news at news.marketecture.tv. And if you're feeling social, we operate a vibrant Slack community that you can apply to join at adtechgod.com.